So I, told him to come over from Twitter. He said, he tweeted, "I'm happy to finally announce my work, and it is a decentralized exchange for Bitcoin, ETH, and Monero." And when I read that, I started getting really fucking excited. And I said, well, fucking come on then. Give us a fucking pitch. Tell us what it's about. And fuck me, he's come on.
Oh, fun. I'm getting called a Fed. Someone else did this on Twitter, and I'm now curious if it's the same exact person.
Okay, let's go. Give us the pitch then. Tell us about it.
So basically, as much as I love atomic swaps for the cryptographic guarantees they offer, users have largely rejected the atomic swap model. And this is undeniable because the atomic swap model has a almost identical UX to BISC. And I think BISC is lucky to do a couple $100,000 of volume a day. And this was during the middle of the bull run we just had. And if you're only doing a couple $100,000 a day during the bull run, in an industry where we have exchanges that sometimes do hundreds of millions, or I believe billions, or if we even look at some other DEXs, which, obviously users are just not going for that model. And what they are going for is liquidity pools, popularized via Uniswap, but also widely adopted by Curve, continued into Uniswap v3, and so on. So what my work is, it's creating a liquidity pool DEX for native coins, such as Bitcoin, Monero, and Ethereum, which means users don't have to run a node all the time to offer swaps. They don't have to keep their node online for the entire half hour. Oh, and if they go offline, they just lose all their money. Sorry, nothing we can do. But no, instead we have a decentralized collective of financially bonded nodes running a multisig, and because of that, they can securely take funds in and execute trades without putting additional burden on users. And the users can therefore also provide liquidity without having to run a node doing offers and earn trading fees on that while strengthening the accessibility of one coin to another.
I mean, it sounds amazing. It sounds like the Holy Grail.
One of us. One of us.
So what? So this is like. It sounds a little bit like what's that other one? Thor. Sounds a little bit like Thor.
Thorchain, yes, that is going to be what we're widely compared to. And yeah, if you told me to explain it in 5 seconds, I would say Thorchain, but good. But if I'm getting the chance to do a fresh start elevator pitch, I'm going to try to make it my own thing and not about Thorchain.
Yeah. So if I have some Bitcoin, then just give me the TLDR on how I go about trading my Bitcoin for Monero.
You would open up the relevant website or app or however you want to connect to this, and it would say, okay, you want to execute a trade for Monero. Can you sign this Bitcoin transaction? It's going to be for 1 Bitcoin, and you are estimated to get X Monero out, but at least X minus 1. And you say, okay, you send it, and about 20 minutes later, you have Monero in your wallet.
Who sets the rate?
So it's a liquidity pool. So if someone provides liquidity of 1 Bitcoin to 1 Monero, suddenly you'll be able to trade 1 Bitcoin for 1 Monero, except that completely uses the pool up. And because of that, it radically shifts the ratio. And the actual price you get is a mix of the pre and final ratio. So the ratio is based on whatever trades have last executed for and the size of the trade you're executing.
And who is managing the liquidity pool? How does that work?
So when users provide liquidity, they're effectively trading into it. If there's 1 Bitcoin and 1 Monero and you add 1 Bitcoin in liquidity, you are then creating a new liquidity, or you're updating the liquidity pool to have 2 Bitcoin and 1 Monero, which means the spot price would be 1 Monero for 2 Bitcoin. So basically, that's how the pricing is set. But obviously, these funds have to be somewhere. You're saying you're sending Bitcoin, you're losing custody. That's how it is. So because of that, it's a multi-sig solution, which means no one can just run off with your funds. It would require, with the numbers we're hoping to eventually reach, over 60 parties to collude. And yes, they can collude. This is the problem that we see with a lot of situations. So the solution is that in order to participate in the multi-sig, you have to provide a bond. And then if you steal, act maliciously, go offline, stop contributing, you will lose your bond. and the bond costs more than you would gain from stealing the multisig. So basically, you can steal the multisig, but you'll have to pay for it to do it.
And so like the actual who's running the kind of like the node, if you like, or nodes, like how does that work?
Just like Bitcoin, anyone will be able to download and run a node, and then you yourself can join the multisig as long as you put up enough coins.
Okay, so I put up enough ETH and Bitcoin, and all of a sudden I'm providing liquidity. But why would I be incentivized to do that if I'm concerned about the liquidity and somebody end up swapping at a very unfavorable rate?
So there's a couple of comments here. First of all, this does actually have its own coin, which I kind of regret, but it's also needed for a few reasons. And that is the coin that you put up if you want to be a multisig participant. The premise is if you could bond Bitcoin, great. You're now putting Bitcoin in the multisig to promise you'll never steal the multisig. What that really means is if you steal the multisig, you just get your Bitcoin back. There's no financial disincentive there other than a temporary lockup. So the solution is you introduce a new coin on the premise that the new coin will go to zero because it's native to the network. And if the network loses all its assets, yeah, there's no real reason to be holding that coin, is there? So there's a new coin introduced for that, which will also be called Serai. And that's what's bonded to become a multisig participant. Now, if you put up liquidity, you're putting up liquidity at the same rate of the existing pool values. So if there's 1 Bitcoin to X Monero in there, and you want to double the liquidity, you're also putting in 1 Bitcoin in X Monero. So it's not an unfavorable rate. It's just, this is the rate, and you can agree to it or not. And then if someone executes a trade, they're executing a trade. They're swapping out whatever rate there is. And if they're putting in more Monero, then suddenly the Bitcoin is worth more. And you still have Bitcoin and you still have Monero. So overall, your position should remain relatively unaffected, but you do also earn trading fees, which do scale with the size of the trade executed, which also means that if the ratio does significantly change, you actually earn more fees because of it.
Now, generally, those fees on these liquidity pools are kind of minuscule, right? I never understood what the incentive is to provide liquidity when you suffer impermanent loss, and an impermanent loss is usually more than the actual trading fees that you gain, and it's
right. So there's been a lot of discussions with it only making sense to provide USD liquidity, because if you provide USD liquidity, you're not suffering impermanent loss.
right.
And there also have been protocols which offer impermanent loss protections, such as Banker and even Thorchain. The significance there is, even without those issues, people are still providing liquidity, because no matter what the theory is, they're deciding they're making enough money from fees. They think it offers more stability. I can't comment. All I know is that people are still willing to do it.
Are you speaking on the DeFi markets in general?
Yeah. If you go to Uniswap, you can find pools with a ton of tokens, and Uniswap doesn't have any impermanent loss protection.
But generally, the issue is you're basically providing, or you're quoting people an APY of some ridiculous number, and so that kind of suckers in people into providing liquidity, which is basically rented liquidity, so that potentially, at the cost of losing the counterparty risk and the impermanent loss. So people get suckered into this. I'm just curious because I played around with all this DeFi stuff, and generally I understand it. I've even created liquidity pools.
I'm definitely a developer here, not an economist. The simple fact that for Uniswap with no IOP, there's still a successful Bitcoin Ethereum pool. Yeah, sure, there's a bunch of people claiming bullshit APIs, leashing off liquidity, and there's probably a bunch of services offering additional services on provided liquidity, but it doesn't change the fact that obviously for large portions of the market, regardless of the theoretics, because I have read similar blog posts that just say, Yeah, no, providing liquidity generally isn't worth it. That doesn't change the fact that people do still provide liquidity, and there are still tens of millions to
nothing
hundreds of
against
millions
you. I'm
involved
just
with
saying,
these
generally
markets.
speaking, I think the DeFi markets and liquidity pools have suffered more of a net loss than a net gain due to these pools, due to permanent loss and tax and all this extra stuff.
Yes, it is my job to make sure we do not get hacked. It is
It just seems
not going
like
to be my job to write off the full economic paper justifying why you should be here.
Yeah.
But I do know that is going to be a very long discussion when the time comes.
I'm quite against DeFi. I always found it to be a gimmick, and I just found it a way to rent liquidity from people so that you have markets that aren't so illiquid. And it's a way for, well, depending on what you are, what token you have, it's a way to provide liquidity so that you're able to dump on people that are providing liquidity. Just my 2 cents.
I generally despise DeFi and largely agree with you there, but I think there's a legitimate service in providing decentralized exchanges. So I think right. So that's why the question isn't, does DeFi in general suck? The question is, how can we accomplish this?
Absolutely. I mean, to think we're like 10 years down the line and you can't trade your Bitcoin properly in a decentralized way is absolutely criminal. Now, what I wanted to ask you was, how is it that you've been able to achieve this kind of two-way atomic swap, Bitcoin to ETH, Bitcoin to Monero, whatever? How have you been able to do this? But so far, nobody else, has been able to. Is this from the last Monero upgrade, or what's the deal?
So it's actually not an atomic swap. Though I did do the first implementation of atomic swaps for Monero, so that was fun. This is explicitly not atomic swaps. You're sending your funds to a multisig, and that multisig, yes, it can walk away with your funds, and I'm never going to say otherwise because I'm not here to lie and claim bullshit APYs and fall into the rest of DeFi. The comment is that the multisig will be economically secured and that it's not profitable to do so, and relying on traditional game theory commentary there. But the reason this hasn't been done before, it kind of has been done. As much as I hate them, Thorchain did set out to build a cross-chain DEX, and with varying levels of success, does allow you to exchange Bitcoin for Ethereum and so on. The only distinction is that we're actually targeting Monero, which Thorchain is also targeting. Is the reason that I actually got to work on this after discussing it with a few people for about a year on and off, is because I did not appreciate them trying to take advantage of the Monero community like that.
Now, sorry to cut you off. Is this similar to like STG and how they do their whole cross-platform, cross-chain swaps?
What group is this?
STG. Stargate. No, know if you heard of it.
I don't actually. I haven't. I think I know. No, I know of Astroport from the Terra ecosystem. I don't know of Stargate.
So
the comment I wanted to make though is that Thorchain did demonstrate the groundwork, and with Monero specifically, it's more no one put in the effort to include Monero yet. Monero has had multisig and threshold multisig for a long time now. And it was recently proven very, very, very insecure as implemented. And it's the upcoming upgrade, which will introduce a secure version. But I'd also like to note that we actually don't use their multisig at all. I wrote my own implementation that should be vastly more performant and more applicable, because we also needed multisig for Bitcoin, and we also needed multisig for Ethereum, so on and so on. So I wrote our own multisig implementation that will cover all our bases there, including Monero, instead of relying on Monero to eventually ship the secured version.
But you smart. You smart like math smart, huh?
Someone brought up Darrow in chat, and I just want to say, I don't like you. You called me a Fed. You're asking about shitcoins, which make false claims and use that to get people to buy their bags. Decky, you're really just my least favorite person right now. I just want you to know that.
So, say I spin up a Bitcoin node, my own Serai DEX Bitcoin node right now, and I want to put 1 Bitcoin in it, and I want to join the multisig.
So if you want to join the multisig, You buy the Serai and you stake that while running a Serai node. Which
What is
also
that?
involves running the Bitcoin node, also involves running the Ethereum node, and also involves running the Monero node. If
Okay,
you
so
want
I-
to be a validator, sorry, go ahead.
So I have to run all 3 nodes to join the network, if you like, and I have to buy some Serai token and stake it.
Right. And we're not doing any bullshit staking in general. It's specifically you are allowed to bond your Serai to become a node.
I mean, what about the attack vector that the pool is worth more than the liquidity of the Serai token?
Right. So the premise is it takes 67% of nodes to successfully steal the multisig. So accordingly, the multisig bond must be 150% of the pool value. So we introduce liquidity caps that prevent people from adding liquidity until. Basically ensuring that that never comes up, because that would be an attack vector. And with the Thorchain model, they had to be a bit more aggressive, because not only did they have a global liquidity cap, or not only did they have a multisig wallet, but they actually funded individual nodes with segments of the multisig wallet, because they use a very inefficient algorithm. And they had to for the time. As much as I don't like them, I understand why that decision was made. But they use a very inefficient algorithm, and they literally just couldn't handle their transaction volume using the multisig. So what they did is they have the multisig sort of serve as a cold wallet that funds individual nodes as hot wallets to actually do trades. So between that and other considerations, yeah, they just had a very strict liquidity cap and kept it going. And we will have the liquidity cap. And there is a discussion, how big is too big to fail? But for right now, the comment is just adding liquidity is halted when the pool value exceeds 67% of the bond value, which would make it more incentivized to steal than participate.
And what about the attack vector of the actual of yourself and the other kind of people behind the project via state entities saying you are launching, a money service transmitter, you are an exchange, you know what I mean? What about that attack vector? What's the mitigation against that?
The fact that I don't plan on running a node, but I am considering owning a company in a foreign country, which may or may not run a node when the time comes.
Yeah.
Basically, working. Sure. Hello.
Right, I was just going to add to that, because Fibber made a good point, and I came in a bit late, so this might have already been answered. But you say it's a decentralized. So is any of this stack centralized to run it? So, I mean, ignoring like the developer side, because I guess Flipper asked already, but is any part of the stack required to be centralized to make this system work?
No, validators run a full copy of the stack locally, and none of them has special permissions over each other. The only centralized component is that you need an initial set of validators, and that you need someone to initially hold the first Bitcoin that comes in. So the only centralized aspect is going to be the bootstrap multisig, and even that will still be a multisig. It's just going to have some level of community agreed upon initial actors.
And then it's just purely interacting with the various chains via smart contracts, etc.
Well, unlike other bridges, which, like if you look at most Ethereum bridges and even like Cosmos or whatever, what they do is they have every node publish a signature to a smart contract, which means you have a smart contract, or you have a transaction to make the call, then you have a function call, then you're validating the signature, then you're storing the signature, and then you're counting how many signatures have been submitted, and then you're executing. And that is a lot of bloat, so we actually aren't doing that. We're just using cryptographic multi-signatures. So instead of having a smart contract say, hey, do you have 6 signatures? It just says, hey, do you have a signature? And it's completely oblivious to the fact we produced it as a threshold scheme. So not smart contracts generally, but yes, that is why every node on the network has to run a Bitcoin node, an Ethereum node, and a Monero node, just to ensure access.
And so, like when I launch a node, I launched these Monero ETH Bitcoin node, and I'm running them locally here, and I want to join the network and join the pool. So, okay, so I've got.
You can run a Serai node without running any other nodes. It's if you're a validator that you have to run all the nodes, as in a participant in the multisig. Or if you want to actually validate the validators aren't lying about transactions, which you can do yourself without being a validator. Or if you just want to provide liquidity, you just download the app. You don't have to run a node.
Okay, so if I just want to provide liquidity, so how does that work then?
Well, right now we're discussing with Cake Wallet, who also runs Monero.com and integration there.
Yep.
So if you use Cake Wallet for your Monero, you just go in your app and say you want to provide liquidity, or you say you want to swap to Bitcoin, and you just do it in the app.
Okay, well, let's say that I do want to run a full blown stack, and put my money in via that. Then okay, so now you've got to recreate the multisig, right? The Bitcoin multisig with the new public keys.
Right. If we're having the set of participants change, we have to recreate it. So we aren't aiming to say everyone on the planet gets to have a multisig. We're specifically saying the chain validators and targeting at this time 1 to 200.
Yeah.
And then that only changes every 1 to 3 or 1 to 3 days, maybe even weekly. And the only cost of regenerating the keys is just the forwarding transaction on Bitcoin, where you move all the old outputs to the new multisig. So that means we have one transaction fee a week, which is manageable.
Yeah, that could be pretty expensive transaction though. I mean, if you're talking about, like, I don't know, 50 plus, new public keys into that script pub key, whatever it is.
No, it's not using script pub key. It's using cryptography for the signatures. It looks like a standard public key to everyone else. And according to Bitcoin, it's just a single public key transaction. Okay. So our concern would be over amount of outputs, not about the actual script size.
Okay. And the messaging for forwarding around those the new keys in the multisig, how does that work?
So we're building the chain off of Substrate because I have actually built my own node from the ground up before, and it's not fun, and I don't want to spend another 3 years doing so. So this one is just going to be off Substrate, which gives you a blockchain, gives you a peer-to-peer network, lets you build apps on top of it, exactly like this discussion. And we're going to be hooking into the blockchain network's peer-to-peer network to perform the key generation ceremony as necessary.
Okay.
Fascinating. It's great to see development like this because, I agree with what Flibber says is that, we need strong DEXs for blockchain future. We can't really just be relying purely on centralized exchanges. So, thank you for pushing it ahead.
Happy to. The reason I really wanted to is because, there were a lot of discussions about Thorchain, the current top person in this space, who I actually just finished disclosing a critical vulnerability to. I have a lot of issues with them. I don't think that they've proven they're responsible. I don't believe the team is putting their best selves forward. They had over 50% of their entire coin supply go to central actors at the start. There's just a lot of issues there. And I'm like, wow, I really don't want these people to be how Monero users start moving their funds around, which means I finally have to step up there.
Well, how many times has Thor had vulnerabilities? They've had quite a few major vulnerabilities, haven't they?
I believe they have been hacked for millions of dollars 3 times. And I believe since then, 6 critical vulnerabilities have been disclosed, not including the one I just did.
I mean, the problem with crypto in a raging bull market is that the incentive is to ship immediately. There is no incentive really to have a secure product because, users, they have no idea of judging if your product's secure. They just see the marketing, they see the token, and they see the price. And, as long as those things, match up, they'll degen their life savings into something. And, they get fucking wrecked.
Right, we're definitely hoping to have a much better approach there.
yeah, I mean, the fact that you're launching basically in a bear market is good because that's where the best shit's made. I think, the economics of a raging bull market basically distort, good practice. And yeah, that's just an unfortunate fact of life. So, yeah, I mean,
It
I
also
think it's
means
good.
we aren't starting with a minus 80% evaluation, which is always great.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, Decky, Substrate, or it's going to be its own blockchain run via Substrate, which is a blockchain framework. So it is going to be its own network. And then for the tokens, there is going to be an initial group of people in the multisig. And that's how trades are initially going to happen. An initial group of people run the multisig, they take in funds, they execute trades. And then as other users acquire Serai and are able to actually bond it and become nodes, they'll filter out the old group.
So how do Serai get issued? Like, are they just created out of thin air and given to my buddies, and we have this big pre-mine?
Right, so we're discussing 4 different things for that. One, we're discussing what is, yes, effectively a pre-mine for the initial nodes, and that has been everything from one node. Like, from the start, Serai is financially bonded because the initial nodes are bonded. To a fraction of a node, just because, no, if you start doing the math on one whole node for just the 11 people or however many we have initially there, no, that becomes a lot of money if your goal is complete financial bonding. Because if you have 11 people and you get 10 million in deposits at the start, those 11 people need to have $15 million bonded, which means they're effectively just getting $1.5 million off the bat, which is concerning for a fledgling market. So there's also discussions about just giving them 1/10 of a node or half a node in bond. So there are discussions there. We're also discussing an effective airdrop in that users could provide liquidity and they'd be able to withdraw it at any time without restriction. But after 2 weeks of providing liquidity for no purpose, we just flood the pools with a matching amount of Serai, effectively airdropping Serai to whoever's willing to initially provide liquidity. And while that would start a race to withdraw your liquidity and sell out, we would allow withdrawing at any time, but only to get your original deposit back. To actually get the Serai, that would be trickle fed over the next few months.
But let's just say that this is day one. This is day one of the Serai launch. Some Serai needs to be in existence.
Actually, no, that's not the current plan. The currently discussed plan is we open the markets up to allow anyone to deposit Monero, Bitcoin, whatever. And then at 2 weeks or however long, then we effectively airdrop Serai for the initial liquidity. And from there, people would be able to purchase and exchange it.
Okay, so like, if I, how does Serai come into existence? Or does you said the airdrop.
So we launched a network and we have however many people, and they're trusted to run the initial multisig at the start of the network. Okay. You say, I believe in decentralized exchanges. I want to provide liquidity. I have 5 Bitcoin sitting here. I'm going to provide 5 Bitcoin in liquidity.
Okay.
So you deposit 5 Bitcoin. And nothing happens for roughly 2 weeks. But during that time, if you want to withdraw, you can withdraw immediately. You can withdraw at any time without concern. And then 2 weeks from there, suddenly you don't have 5 Bitcoin in liquidity. You have 5 Bitcoin and 100 Serai. So we basically do single-sided liquidity to start the network. So there's nothing on the other end. You can't do trades. And then once people actually start trading in, we are adding liquidity. We airdrop Serai to complete the other half. And now suddenly we have a market with X Serai matched by 5 Bitcoin, which means all the Serai in the pool are worth 5 Bitcoin because it's a liquidity pool, and users can buy it. But no one actually has Serai, so they can't sell it. So this actually sets a pseudo floor price at the start of the network. So now the comment is, how do you withdraw your liquidity? And you can still withdraw your 5 Bitcoin anytime, no issue. But if you actually want the Serai, you have to wait a further month to withdraw.
But that my actual question was going to be, why would anybody put up a bid to buy the Serai on a market?
All liquidity pools are matched against Serai. So a trade from Monero to Ethereum or Monero to Ether is actually Monero to Serai and Serai to Ether.
Oh, so you like normalize it through Serai?
Right. So then you would buy Serai in either one for arbitrage opportunities, two because you want to provide liquidity. So you need Serai to provide liquidity, or three because you want to create a node.
Okay. I always struggle on the economic incentives behind these tokens because they always seem to me like the winning strategy is just to like just anytime you ever get these tokens, just dump them and just convert it.
Right, which is why we're discussing that while you can withdraw your Bitcoin at any time, we're discussing trickle feeding the Serai. So 2 weeks in, when you actually get the Serai airdropped, you can withdraw your Bitcoin. We won't stop you, but you won't get Serai for it. But if you withdraw it on day one, you'll get one of your 100 Serai. If you get it on day two, you get two of it, so on and so on. And well, yes, this means that price will slowly go down as some users think the 2 Serai is good enough and not bother waiting 3 months or however long. Other users will be earning trading fees from people executing swaps. Other people will be buying Serai to provide new liquidity. And we're hoping that by demonstrating the successful financial incentives of liquidity providing, people will wait and stay in the system, even once their Serai is fully unlocked. But we don't intend to ever lock up liquidity. We're solely locking up the airdrop Serai component.
Okay. Well,
there is also a block reward for validators. That is the other way new Serai comes in.
Yeah. Okay, so every block you get some. If you're a validator, you get a little bit of Serai.
Right.
Fucking surely to God, it's gonna just be a selling market just constantly on that shit. Surely.
I would hope not.
We'll see. Okay, well, I feel pretty informed, a lot more than I did now. I appreciate you coming on and explaining it to me and the others. I got another question though. Shill me Rust in like fucking 30 seconds. Go on, give me an elevator.
Rust is a memory safe. Rust is a language that offers complete memory safety. So if you're not using it unsafe, unless you find an error within the language itself, you should not be able to perform a sig fault, nor should you be able to write to memory that you're not supposed to write to. This prevents several common bugs by developers not realizing how pieces relate, and that combined with a very expressive type system that allows creating composable systems, it allows a lot of expressiveness with the modularity of your code base, as I've demonstrated for my Frost implementation, which is abstracted not only over the curve, such as Bitcoin's SECP or Monero's ED25519, yet also over the algorithm it runs. So you can do standard Schnorr signatures or Monero CLSEC.
Okay, well, that's cool. I mean, I don't think I can write over some memory which I couldn't have access to with Go anyway, so...
What I found I was doing at one point, when one of my friends was trying to show me on Rust, is I was writing to a table I was iterating over. And that corrupted the iterator.
In Go?
This was actually in NIM, not in Go.
Yeah.
But does Go let you write to a map as you iterate over it? Wait, no. Go doesn't have... It's... I know for arrays, it doesn't let you edit arrays. Are maps also like that or no?
That is a good question. I don't know, to be honest with you. I generally try not to do that because if I tried doing that in Python, you obviously you got a problem on your hands. So I've just avoided doing that ever since. I've never tried it.
Right. Rust just guarantees that you only have one thing writing. And if something is writing, you can't read from it at the same time.
So it has like a built-in like lock? Is that like a built-in thread lock or?
Well, no. It's done at compile time.
Okay.
It's the borrowed checker. It says if you have something mutably borrowed, you can't also non-mutably borrow it. And there are situations where, obviously, no, you can't do everything at compile time. So there also are runtime lock structures enabled. But you can't just set a compiler flag and start writing unsafe code. You have to grab from the standard library the runtime safe variants and use their types as wrappers.
All right. Well, I'll put it on my to-do list to check it out again.
I think I was very efficient at not only shilling Kip, but my work. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. I think I'm all in favor of any DEX. I'm not a big fan of Serai. I don't really think the token. I would definitely be a seller of that anytime I could. But I like the idea of the DEX.
The main issue is just without the token, you don't have the financial security, meaning that you're back to a centralized exchange because you're just trusting the multi-sig actors not to run off.
Yeah, no, I get why you've had to do it because, like you say, otherwise it would have to be denominated in one of the other three, and then you just end up taking that anyway. So,
Right now, I'm writing code on the premise that Uniswap has liquidity, Curve has liquidity, Thorchain hasn't imploded yet. There must be some way to properly design a sane economy around this. And I'm not trying to say I'm skipping it. I am saying that right now I am a developer and I'm working on the code side of things. But I'm sure there are many weeks of economic discussions ahead of me, which I will get to eventually.
Nice.
And
well, yeah, if this is good, and I hope it is good, you're going to be pumping my Bitcoin bags and my Monero bags. So, I'm appreciative of your work.
You can always get it in the first 2 weeks, or however long it is. Even if you end up selling the Serai, you'll be liquidity providing for a bit, helping out the network.
Yeah, okay. All right, good talking. My wife's telling me to get down to where she is, so I've got to go.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, thank you.